Hey, thanks for checking out this video. This is my chance to connect with you as parents about what we're learning in Route 56, our 5th and 6th grade program for kids here at North Coast Church. It's also a chance for you to pull out of what we're teaching so that you can apply some of the lessons during the week and just have some spiritual stuff kind of to talk through with your kids. So our lesson this week was Kissed and Cuffed. That's part of our flyby, and it was Judas's betrayal of Christ and then Christ's arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane. Couple things that we focused on with that. The first was that God is in control, and then the second was that, you know, what type of a person are you? Are you trying to get Jesus to fit your mold, or are you letting Jesus be who he really was? A lot of our students, coming with that second point, a lot of our students have grown up in the church, and you know that as their parents if you've been in the church for a long time. And so in that sense, they follow more of a path that, I don't want to call them the Pharisees because that's such a negative connotation, but really the people that grew up in the church and had expectations of this is what our Messiah is going to be like. You know, they knew how to do church. They knew what their life was like as a Jewish people. And when Christ came, he really didn't fit the mold in the way that they wanted him to, especially for the teachers and, really leaders in the church. And so part of the morning was just getting them to think, really, positionally, a lot of us are like the kids who grew up in the church, and that we'll continue in the church and eventually maybe lead. And so, are we trying to get Jesus to be what we want him to be? Are we trying to? Do we have a mold that we want him to fit in? Is there a certain way he would dress and certain type of people he would hang out with according to our standards here? In 2010 Southern California. And is that really who he was? I think that a tell of this, if you're going to ask your kids a question about it, would be, how do you think that the people should be treated who are sinners, who are, really, who's the worst type of person you can think of in society, and how should they be treated, And I mean, if they're going to give a churchy answer, they'll say, love and this and that. But I mean, really getting down to, how would you feel if you saw Jesus sitting and like sharing a fish taco with a Nazi person, like someone who's into KKK or something, which is just beyond us awful. Like, if we saw Jesus relating to somebody like that, like, would we just be like, oh, you can't be Jesus? Like, what are you doing? And I think that for a lot of people, in the Jewish society, Jesus was connecting with, tax collectors, prostitutes, the people that they considered were just like, no, totally unacceptable. And so I think that's kind of a tell, is how we relate to the people that Jesus really cared about. So that's part of it. Another focus was that God is in control. So this is a very dark moment for humanity and a really dark moment in Christ's life. And we know that he came into the Garden of Gethsemane praying, if this cup can be taken from me, like, let's do plan B. Like, I don't want to do this, but your will be done. And, we think it's Peter who chops off the ear and, gets crazy in the Garden of Gethsemane and tries to fight the guards. And, Jesus tells him, no, he who lives by the sword is going to die by the sword. And he says another thing to him, which is maybe a little bit less famous, but he says, don't you know that if I wanted to, I could have called down 12 legions of angels, which is about 70,000 angels. So it's just a number. But, Jesus is saying, if I wasn't stepping into this willingly, don't worry, I could cover for myself. Like, I don't need you to fight for me, Peter. And that just gives us this really sense that Jesus was willing to do that. And God was in control the whole time. This wasn't a moment of history where God suddenly, failed. This was a moment where he stepped down. He did what needed to be done because he cared about us. And really, they could have abandoned the whole project and said, let's start a new planet. But Jesus cared about us, and he was willing to go to that length to save us. So let's see, another question for them would be, how does knowing that God is in control make you feel about your own hard times? Like, do you see hope and glory, a future of glory in what you're going through right now? And can you relax a little bit and let Jesus take care of you in those times? So that's kind of what we did this weekend.